with the Chicken Society, Secret Chicken Society. Daniel wanted to have a chick to bring home. He had to bring $2 in a permission slip. He ended up getting all 5 chicks that were hatched for various reasons why his classmates couldn't take them home. Why did the chicken cross the road? Chapter 5. 5, Mom exclaimed. I said that we could take 1. Well, it's a little hard to explain, Dad began. Daniel put the box in the back porch. He lifted the cardboard flaps. The 5 chicks up looked at him with bright eyes. Just look at them, said Dad. We couldn't leave them at school. They're so sweet. He pulled Mom over. She put her hands on her hips. She wouldn't look into the box, but the other kids crowded around. I'm going to call mine Daffodil, said Kelsey. She picked up a fat, creamy chick with black legs. The chick had a little tuft of feathers on her head like a top knot. I thought you were going to name her Primrose, Daniel said. That's what I meant, said Kelsey. She stroked the chick. Primrose it is. Emmy held out her hands. Daniel handed her a fluffy, pale yellow chick. My chick's name is going to be Twinkie. Give one to Tyler, too. Tyler peered into the box. The black chick stared fiercely back. Tyler stroked his chick with one finger, but he didn't pick her up. What are you going to name her? Asked Kelsey. T-Rex, said Tyler. She looks tough, like a dinosaur. And birds are kind of related to dinosaurs. But I don't want a chick. I'm giving mine to Emmy. She can have 2. Oh, goody, said Emmy. But I'm not calling her T-Rex. That's not a girl name. No, that's the deal. T-Rex, or you can't have her. Emmy shrugged. Better a chick called T-Rex than no chick at all. She picked her up. Now only 2 chicks were left in the box. This little one is Peepers, said Daniel. He carefully lifted the tiny chick with both hands. She's mine. There's one left out, Emmy pointed. The last chick was gray. Daniel scooped her up and held her out to Mom. No, said Mom, putting her up her hands to warn her off. But Mom, she's so cute, said Daniel. No, no, and no. Daniel made his big eyes, pleading, just hold her for a minute, Mom. Mom sighed. 1 minute. Mom said no, but Daniel could see that she was melting. Mom cuddled the fuzzy chick against her cheek. Oh, she is so soft. I can feel her heart beating. Let's call this one Violet. So that was that. Dad winked at Daniel. Daniel grinned back. They got Mom. The chicks slept in the box on the porch for a few weeks. Daniel fed them every morning before school when he fed his other pets, and again when he got home. He brought Jasper, Speedy, and Mr. Feathers out to meet his new pets, but the animals didn't seem interested in each other. On Saturdays, he cleaned the box and gave the chicks fresh straw that Dad had bought at the farm supply store. As the chicks grew bigger, Daniel had to change the straw every day. In a week, the box was too soggy and too stinky to use. He got a new box and put the old one on the compost heap. This isn't working out, said Mom, holding her nose. We need a chicken coop. I know, said Dad. It is on my to-do list. But something has always came up to keep him busy. In between working on his website and driving the kids to soccer practice and games, he cooked meals. He did housework, he weeded the garden, he helped out at Emmy's preschool. Somehow the chicken coop never got done. In the meantime, the chicks kept growing. Their wing feathers grew longer, their legs got long and lanky. They had real tail feathers now. They looked like half-grown hens, but they still cheeped and peeped like chicks. By now, the chicks recognized Daniel. They came when he called, peeping loudly. They liked to have their feathers stroked and would rub against his hand. On nice afternoons, Daniel, Kelsey, and Emmy took the chicks outside. The chicks scratched for worms in the backyard. Every night, Daniel made sure they were safe in the brooder box on the porch. One sunny afternoon, all the kids lay on their stomachs in the grass, watching Primrose, Violet, Twinkie, Peepers, and T-Rex scratch for bugs in the dirt. You know, we should have a club, Kelsey said. A chicken club. Kelsey remembers she likes to have clubs. You mean like a sandwich? Joked Tyler. A chicken club sandwich? But no one else laughed. One morning, Daniel came out onto the porch to feed them, and the box was empty. No chicks. Where could they be? He ran back inside. Emmy and Kelsey were still in their pajamas, arguing about what to eat for breakfast. Granola, said Kelsey. Flax flakes, said Emmy. The chicks are gone, shouted Daniel. Help me find them. The kids ran outside, followed by Tyler, who had just awakened. What's going on? He asked sleepily. Daniel called back over his shoulder. The chicks are gone, Tyler. Someone stealed them? Said Emmy. The bad guys? Robbers, said Kelsey. Chicken rustlers, said Tyler. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't think robbers would steal chickens, but where could they be? He padded across the dewy grass in his bare feet, scanning the yard. In the bushes he saw a familiar orange shape. Poison, remember the cat? And that bad cat had a chick under his paws. Peepers! He ran toward the cat, waving his arms and yelling, Shoo! Scat! He clapped his hands hard like Mom did. Poison released Peppers and took off. He looked over his shoulder once, as if to say, I'll be back. Then he squeezed through a hole under the fence into his own backyard. Daniel picked up Peepers. He held her close, stroking her feathers. They were soggy with cat spittle. Her heart fluttered under his hands. She was scared. Daniel set her down and looked for the others. A soft peep, 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 peep came from behind the bushes. Daniel parted the leaves gently. The other 4 chicks huddled against the fence. Their eyes were wide and frightened. Quickly he checked all the other chicks. They're okay. We just got here in time. Miller family to the rescue, said Daniel. Daniel 1, Poison 0. That's a score. Chapter 6, The Great Escape. In a few weeks, the chicks had grown into hens. Their fluff was completely gone. They had sleek, soft feathers. Their plump bodies balanced on skinny legs. Instead of peep, peep, peeping, they clucked softly. Twinkie's pure white feathers shone like marshmallow cream. Violet was the tallest. She had grayed feathers and a delicate pink comb. Primrose probably was the most unusual. Her white feathers were long and silky. Her fluffy topknot looked like a feathered hat. T-Rex, though, still had a fierce look, belying her sweet nature. In other words, she was fierce, but she was sweet. Her black and white feathers reminded Daniel of polka dots. Peepers was the littlest, but her comb was the largest. It crowned her head. We talked about the comb on top of their head. She had a long red wattle. In spite of her size, she seemed to be the ringleader. She liked to fly on top of the hay bale and stand guard. At night, she would herd the others into the coop. Daniel was very proud of her. She's the boss, he told Kelsey. A few days later, Daniel took Peepers over to meet Mrs. Gruffalo. He chose a time when Mr. Gruffalo wasn't home. He didn't like to admit it, even to himself, but Mr. Gruffalo's fierce eyebrows always scared him just a tiny bit. Mrs. G, on the other hand, was delighted to meet Peepers. She held the chicken in her lap like a cat. Peepers closed her eyes and clucked happily. Mrs. G and Daniel sat in the rocking chairs on the front porch. Dot and Dash raced by. Their tongues hung out. Remember, Dot and Dash are their dogs. Their leashes trailed behind them. Miss Clay ran after them, waving her cell phone. Her high heels went clack, clack, clack on the sidewalk. Come back here, boys. She should put away her cell phone when she's walking her dogs, said Daniel. Peepers didn't even flinch when the dogs ran past. She fluffed her feathers and settled down in Mrs. G's lap. He's a very sweet rooster, said Mrs. G. No, Mrs. G, Peepers is a hen. If you say so, dear. What did Mom say about having a rooster? Not happening. A week later, the chickens escaped again. But this time, the Miller family didn't notice. Ding dong, the doorbell rang. Mom was working late at the hospital. Dad had ridden his bicycle to the co-op to buy organic vegetables for dinner. Tyler was in charge, but he was in his room listening to music and didn't hear the doorbell. Daniel had been playing with Jasper. He put the rat on his shoulder and answered the door. Mr. Gruffalo stood on the doorstep. Rain streamed from his hat. His face was red. His fists were clenched. His eyebrows bristled. Where are your parents? He demanded. He didn't wait for an answer. Your chickens are running wild in my garden. Daniel nodded, too startled to speak. Jasper clutched his shoulder with his tiny claws. Kelsey and Emmy stood behind him. Emmy grabbed his shirt tail. Sorry, Mr. Gruffalo. We'll come right over there and get them, Daniel said. You better, before they ruin my flowers, growled Mr. Gruffalo. Daniel put Jasper back into his tank. Then he and his sisters followed Mr. Gruffalo into the yard next door. The sky was cloudy. It had stopped pouring, but rain fell in a gentle mist. Primrose, Violet, Twinkie, and T-Rex strutted among the dripping flower bushes. They clucked softly and scratched for bugs in the mud. Peepers stood guard under a tall rose bush. Daniel looked around for poison, but he didn't see the big cat. Where was Mrs. Gruffalo, I wonder, come to think of it? Daniel hadn't seen her in a while. Maybe she was on a trip. Get them out of here. They are tearing up my begonias, snapped Mr. Gruffalo. Don't worry, said Daniel. We'll get them. They come when I call. Here, chick, 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 chick. The chickens ignored him. I'll get Twinkie, said Emmy. Daniel tried to stop her, but she dashed into the flower bed, stomping on several plants. Watch where you step, yelled Mr. Gruffalo. Kelsey and Emily chased the chickens through the flowers. They tried to be careful, but Emmy crushed the zinnias, and Kelsey smashed the begonias. Daniel stood on the wet lawn. He called and called. Peepers cocked an eye at him, but edged away as he came closer. Daniel tiptoed closer. Peepers tiptoed away. At last Daniel was within reach. He dived and fell face first in the mud. Peepers slid out of his hands. She fluttered into the rosebuds, cackling with glee. My prize roses, shouted Mr. Gruffalo. His face was beet red by now. Finally, Daniel and his sisters managed to herd the chickens to the fence. Maybe the chickens were tired. Maybe they decided the game was over. They stood as still as statues and let the kids scoop them up. Those dreaded chickens, complained Mr. Gruffalo. Chickens are good for gardens, Daniel said, panting. He tucked Peepers under his arm. His glasses had fogged up from the rain, but he couldn't hold Peepers and dry them too. My dad says that chickens eat bugs, and their manure is good fertilizer. Maybe you should get some too, Mr. Gruffalo. Mr. Gruffalo folded his arms and glared. Chickens are noisy and smelly, and they attract rodents. They spread disease, they lower the property values, they're a public nuisance, and they shouldn't be allowed in the city. Daniel just couldn't keep quiet any longer. They aren't a nuisance. Besides, keeping backyard chickens is legal. Well, I know that. I'm on the city council. The council passed it 5-1, but I'm the only one that voted against it. Chickens are allowed, he paused, but not roosters. Glaring at Peepers. Well, that's okay then, because we only have hens. Are you sure about that? Asked Mr. Gruffalo, watching them leave with narrowed eyes. He looked just like his cat Poison when he glared. Because if I hear one single crow, I'm going to call the police so fast it'll knock your socks off. Don't worry, muttered Daniel as they left. You won't. The kids carried the chickens home. Daniel's wet shoes made squelching sounds on the sidewalk. Mr. Gruffalo the buffalo, said Emmy when they were back in their own yard. Shh, Daniel, said Daniel, trying not to laugh. Dad came home as they put the birds back into their box. Daniel told him all about the great chicken escape. Dad scratched his head, shoved his glasses up on his nose. He looked worried. First thing tomorrow, we will build a chicken coop with a chicken run, said Dad. A chicken coop? Asked Emmy. A hen house? Said Kelsey. A hen hotel, said Daniel. He gently set Peepers in the box. It's gonna be nice.